Sanibona emakhaya igama lami Scelo Ngubane. I'm an inspirational speaker. Today we have our gigantic guest who's going to be breaking the big enterprise BE language that we all know or talk about. Today we will see break it down, into small pieces that we may understand. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Scelo. Great to be here.
Yes.
My name is Don Malabie. I hail from Pretoria and currently residing in Johannesburg. I spend half of my life in the corporate environment,
Yes.
working as a transformation specialist.
Yes.
And I've then moved over to starting my own firm where I'm providing strategic counseling on transformation in terms of Black economic empowerment.
Awesome. Black economical empowerment. Please break that down for us.
Damn, we need a whole day to talk about Black economic empowerment.
Yes.
It is a legislation that was passed by Parliament in the early 2000s. And the objective of this legislation is really to facilitate the economic emancipation of Black people. By that, what I mean is that we all know that prior to the democratic era, Black people were marginalized.
Yes.
We were not active participants in the mainstream economy.
Yeah.
Even if you had this great idea and then you wanted to start a business, it was just impossible unless in your environment, in the townships, that's where you could flourish, but you wouldn't go beyond that. So when the new democratic era was ushered in, one of the pieces of legislation that was introduced by government was Black economic empowerment. And I'm emphasizing Black economic empowerment because it has gone through transformation itself. So when this legislation was enacted, then it was what they call narrow-based BEE.
Okay.
Which means as long as there's a few individuals that buys equity in a white-owned company, that white company would be looked at as a transformed, as a compliant in terms of BEE.
Okay.
But what that did is that instead of benefiting the masses, it ended up benefiting a few individuals. Because not a lot of people can afford to buy a stake in a business. You need hundreds of millions. So there were a few individuals, without mentioning names, who could afford that. And some individuals, they didn't have to buy. They were offered free shares, and that was classified as vendor financing.
Okay.
Where they will call you in as an influential Black person and they allocate shares and you sit at the board and stuff like that. But then the government realized that no, this thing is narrow focus. It's not benefiting the broader society.
Wow.
They amended the Black Economic Empowerment Act to what they call now broad-based Black economic empowerment.
Okay.
So what it means now, it's broader than just looking at ownership and management control.
Yeah.
There's the main legislation, which is the generic codes on broad-based Black economic empowerment, has got a scorecard.
Okay.
And the scorecard comprises 5 elements, which is ownership, management control. Management control has to do with the board, the executives and the general employees. And you have skills development that has to do with training of your employees. You've got enterprise and supplier development that focuses on the economic empowerment of Black-owned entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And then you have socio-economic development that focuses on how corporates can contribute in the upliftment of local communities.
Wow.
So that is why it's called broad-based and as opposed to Black economic empowerment. Because now the beneficiaries of this legislation is not just a few individuals, but it's a broader society.
Wow.
Ownership is still for those that can afford. Management control. You may have seen recently that corporates are having black people at their board, as board members. Most corporates now, they've got black chief executive officers or chief financial officers or chief operating officers. Their executive committee is now transformed. And then if you drill down into general employees, there's what the Department of Labor issues an annual report on employment equity, just giving the stats in terms of how transformation is unfolding. When you read that report, you'll get a sense that we're making a little bit of progress, but we're still far from reaching a comfortable level.
Wow.
Then you have enterprise and supplier development. This one focuses solely on small black-owned businesses. And, as we discussed prior to the interview, that maybe our focus for the session would hone around enterprise and supplier development in terms of what opportunities exist for entrepreneurs. And then the last one is socioeconomic development. This has to do with the upliftment of communities.
Wow.
So these 5 elements, they are weighted on the scorecard, and depending on which sector you operate. So the generic code is the custodian of BEE. Then you've got sector codes.
Okay.
So if you are in manufacturing, there's a sector for that. There's a sector for agriculture. There's a sector for IT. There's a sector for the financial sector codes. For the financial sector.
Yeah.
So there are nuances that are relevant to those sectors.
Okay.
So if you look at the scorecard in the financial sector, it might not necessarily be the same to a scorecard in the property sector.
Okay.
Or the scorecard in the IT sector. But you have the generic codes that is setting the tone. So all these sector codes are emanating from the generic codes. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. But I think the more information is coming from this.
Yeah.
So you spoke about the difference between giving off the loan and giving off the grant. If you can also expand on that.
All right. So I think, this is privileged information and not to your viewers and listeners, because we spoke prior to the interview.
Yeah.
But I think we need to properly introduce it.
Yeah.
So as we agreed, let's focus on enterprise and supplier development.
Cool.
So enterprise and supplier development is broken into 3 pillars.
Yeah.
So you've got enterprise development, which has to do with corporates making funds available. Point of correction, not necessarily funds, but contributing in the development of a black-owned business. And black-owned business, I mean, to refine it further, in this instance for enterprise and supplier development, it refers to entities that has an annual turnover of less than 10 million.
Okay.
And they are classified as exempted micro enterprises. And then you have entities that have a turnover of between 10 and 50 million.
Okay.
Those are classified as qualifying small enterprises. So they have to be at least 51% owned by black people to qualify for enterprise and supplier development. So according to this legislation, a corporate must spend 3% of its net profit after tax in providing financial and non-financial support towards these 2 types of businesses I just explained.
Yeah.
So if you look at large corporates, 3% of a big corporate could be a lot of money.
A lot.
Yeah. So according to legislation, each corporate, as long as they want to contribute towards BEE in terms of, the economic emancipation of black people, and they want a good scorecard on their profile, they will have to spend at least 3% of net profit after tax in the support of small businesses.
Wow.
So it happens in different ways. Some corporates, they do it themselves. They will calculate what the 3% of net profit after tax is, put aside a budget, and appoint a person internally to manage that portfolio.
Okay.
That person could be an enterprise and supply development specialist, or could be the head of transformation.
Okay.
Other corporates, they would rather contribute into a fund. So there's a lot of funds that have been established for this purpose. I can quote one fund, and this is public knowledge. It's called the ASISA ESD Fund.
Yeah.
It operates within the financial sector. So what happens, as I explained, other corporates, they'll rather put money into a fund, and then the fund will administer, they will look for qualifying black people, black-owned businesses, they will do the scan, the due diligence and all of that. And then if they qualify, then they will be given, whether it's a loan, whether it's a grant, whether it's non-financial support, depending on what that business would have requested.
Yeah.
So this fund was established around 2015.
Okay.
And as far as I could remember, they've raised close to 979 million rands that goes into the development of small businesses. When I checked their recent performance report, I think to date they've already developed close to 790 small businesses.
Wow.
So developed in what sense? Those businesses could have approached them for training, training on various business aspects. They could have approached them to apply for a loan. I don't know. I don't think they give grants, but it's still an option within enterprise and supplier development that you can actually apply for a grant.
Yeah.
So that's how this legislation works for small businesses. Companies are obliged, and not out of choice, but out of, as long as they operate a business in South Africa and they want to comply with BEE, large companies, except for those that I mentioned, the EMEs, the QAs, they don't have to.
Okay.
But the companies that have a turnover of plus 50, they are obliged to contribute at least 3% of net profit after tax. I'm not sure if there's been a study in the country that quantify how much that money is. But I can tell you, just from one fund, 979 million sitting there, directed towards small black businesses. It's a lot of money. So, I did mention that there's hundreds of these funds.
Yeah.
So can you understand, collectively, how much that money is? And it's aimed only at black-owned small businesses that within those bands, the 10 and the 50 million.
And we spoke about the importance of knowing the relevant fund to approach, because, like we said, many entrepreneurs will go for maybe more than 20 proposals that they will send and throw away to different funds, but only to find that they're not relevant. So maybe if you can expand more on the importance of doing research.
Yeah, I think before I respond directly to your question, I do feel that the government, has a lot of work to do around, awareness campaigns on BEE, because I think the in-depth knowledge is limited to a few individuals. I can't give you the exact numbers, but there was a report that was issued in terms of, how many small businesses will close up have closed up over the years. But it's a big amount, man. I can't recall the number. But that shows that, there's a great level of awareness that if you knew that I have a solid business proposal and I can leverage on enterprise and development, enterprise and supply development, and I can apply for a loan from these companies, you have a greater chance.
Yes.
The collaterals and the requirements, for these funds are not as stringent as in the banks.
Okay.
To start with, it's an interest-free loan. So if you were to get an ESD loan, it should be interest-free, then to claim maximum points on the scorecard. But if you were to get a loan from a commercial financing house, you'll pay interest.
Yeah, a lot of interest.
So as an entrepreneur, it does make sense that try and secure a loan for your business via ESD.
Wow.
But then you need to be aware where to go. So, and I think that's where the gap is. That there is not enough communication to empower society in terms of, and it's not just small businesses. There's a socio-economic development, as I said earlier on, which has to do with the upliftment of communities.
Yeah.
We have lots of NGOs in this country. Companies must spend at least 1% of their net profit after tax. So consolidated is 4% of net profit after tax that a corporate must spend towards Black businesses and local communities.
Wow.
But you need to know these things, and you need to have done a proper research so that you don't approach a company that is identified for a set of focus areas, that this is how we help Black people in terms of enterprise and supply development and in terms of socio-economic development. So you would need to know in advance before making an application.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like when you're driving a BMW and you have a mechanical problem, you take your BMW to Toyota. Do you think Toyota will fix your car?
No way.
Absolutely not. But you got to take your BMW to BMW,
Relevant.
and you would know that it's going to get fixed.
Yes.
It's the same thinking. That understand, do your research prior. Do your research so that you know that if I were to approach company A, B, C, and D, this is what they focus on. This is how they provide funding. This is how they provide assistance and so forth. Then you have that information. So by the time you're crafting your proposal, you're meeting the requirements.
Wow.
Yeah. So you get people putting together proposals and sending them widely. And then in that effort, they get declined, all of them. And the reason is not your proposal is not good enough. You send it to the wrong company.
It's not relevant.
It's
to
not
their
relevant
focus
to that
area.
particular company. It could be relevant to company B, but not company C.
Yeah.
So you send it to company C. Company C takes the proposal. They look at it. They say, chuck it in the bin. Had you known, and you have a targeted approach, you've done your research, you would have sent it to the right companies. Chances of success, they become greater in that way.
Yes.
So enterprise and supply development is massive, man. And I think, it's meant for Black-owned businesses.
Yeah.
And what I like in the way it is done is that you can go through a fund, an enterprise supply development fund, or you can approach a company directly.
Wow.
So the requirements are not, there's no hard and fast rule about it. So company A could say, this is what we need when you submit a proposal. Company C will say, this is what we need extra. The fund will say, this is what. So they're not the same. They don't operate in the same way. So that is why it is important to do your desk. And it's easy these days because we have access to gadgets.
Yeah.
You go on Google, type up a name, BEE, and it takes you through, and you're done.
Wow.
But it's important
to do your research.
So the bigger part of our conversation concentrated on two.
Yeah.
Remember, I said enterprise development is broken down into three parts.
Yeah.
So what I discuss now is mostly enterprise development and supplier development. The difference between the two is that with enterprise development, it's anybody's game. Anybody can apply as long as you're running you have a registered business that meets the qualifying criteria. You can apply. But with supplier development, it is meant for those Black-owned businesses that are already providing a service to that particular company.
Oh, okay.
So myself as a small business, I'm already providing a service to company A. Then I qualify under supplier development for that company.
Okay.
But if I go to another company that I'm not providing a service, I could then apply for enterprise development. Okay. So that is the difference.
Okay.
Now, the other leg of enterprise and supplier development talks to what they call preferential procurement, which is a relationship between a supplier and a client.
Okay.
So where you provide services and goods and your client will procure from you. So there are rules there.
Okay.
Within this preferential procurement ban, there's like maybe 5 indicators.
Okay.
There's an indicator just for general, as long as you are BE compliant. There's an indicator for QSE. Remember, I said the qualifying small enterprise, that is 10 and 50 million. There's an indicator for EMEs. There's an indicator for procuring services or goods from an entity that is more than 51% Black.
Okay.
And then the last one is, an entity that is owned by Black female, 30% more than owned by Black people. So there's all those indicators, and then out of each one, there are points on the scorecard, and there's a target. So companies are expected, if they want to do well on their scorecard, they will then measure themselves against those points. So what is happening now, previously we know as a small business, Tula's M Productions, for example, he does this, he does photography and stuff. He wouldn't go to a big corporate and sell his services as a Black person. They wouldn't let him. They would rather take a white-owned business. In the past, that's what it was. So as a Black person, you wouldn't get these opportunities, but you'll grow your business in the township. That's it. But now the tables have changed. Companies are proactively looking for Black-owned small businesses to do business with, which is interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. So if you have a good product as a Black business, or if you have a good service, you are professional, you do your job properly, you don't, I'm using Tulas that we are in his studio, you don't take skew pictures like that, and you are professional. Chances of you getting a contract from a large business are greater now because of this preferential procurement thing. Whereas, as I said that I am a consultant on BE, I sit with clients who will be scratching their heads to say, where do we get more small Black businesses for this service, for that service, for that service? So I find it as a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs.
It is.
Yeah, but maybe not a lot of them know. I don't know. So in the past, prior this legislation, you'll send your profile to a big corporate, and then they'll say, who owns this business? Mahlasela, Kumalo, and then they'll throw it away. And then they'll take another one. Oh, Fantonder, no, let's give this one a business. But these days, when they look at your profile, the first thing, before they can look at the quality or your expertise, the first thing they look at Is he BE compliant? You know, that's the first question.
Wow.
Okay, if he's compliant, they say, all right, he's compliant. What level is he? Is he a level 1? Is he a level 2? There's levels up to 8. And then they say, okay, our policy says we don't do business with anyone that is above a level 4. Then if you're a level 1, 2, 3, then they say, okay, cool. Number 2.
Wow.
Is he black owned? Yes, he's 100% black owned. Oh, that's great. Tick.
Wow.
Does he have any black women shareholding? No, he doesn't. It's okay as long as he's black. And then they then go to your expertise. But do you understand how it works?
Yeah.
Now they go to your expertise, but you have all the ticks, so you're already sitting in a better chance now.
Yeah.
Now they look at your expertise. Okay, this guy has been a photographer for 20 years. He's done this, he's done that, he's done that. Okay, let's give him a chance. So that's how it works these days.
Wow.
Whereas in the past, it was the other way around. So there's far greater opportunities for small businesses like Tulas's, like mine, like yours, in this country.
Wow. With a lot of opportunities that are channeled to really develop.
Huge opportunities.
Wow.
The problem is we got to know, and we must do our research. That is important. Because you cannot be a photographer and you want to sell your business to what? Maybe a photographer is not a good example. You cannot be a panel beater and you want to sell your business to someone that has nothing to do with cars.
It's not relevant.
It's not going to work. You know, but you need to sell your business to someone that you've researched, that you know they need this service.
They're looking for these services.
Even if you don't know they're looking, but you know that they do appoint similar companies.
And this information, you said, it's available for everyone.
If you have a targeted approach, it is available at your disposal. Yes. If you have a targeted approach, of course, yes.
Wow.
What is important, Scelo, is that we don't do as much research. So you just decide, no, I've got a business plan. I'm going to send it to ban. And what informs your decision? What makes you decide that you're going to send to these people? You need to ask yourself that
question.
Why are you sending to these people? Why did you select these people? Most of us, we don't do that. We just decide, in telecommunication, there's only these big 2 companies. I'm going to send it to them. But do they need that service?
Probably not.
Probably not. You know.
And when they reject you, you feel there are no opportunities.
When you get declined, you go around and you sit in your little corner and you say, there are no opportunities. But you didn't do a proper research. I think the one advice I could give to my fellow entrepreneurs, do research. Even before you start with your business proposal. Understand the market. And where do you want to play in that market?
Wow.
And who are the people that can lift you up in that market?
Wow.
You know? So without research, and you know, maybe research is too formal. Google, that's what I mean. Google. You know, don't do research. Just Google.
Because research got intensive, man. That's Google things.
Exactly. And you go to the tank, it's all Google. Exactly that. Just Google. And you know, I've been mentioning the word research. Research could be formal. You know, you need a methodology, you need that. No, I don't mean that. I mean Google.
Find out who's where.
Yes.
Wow. I do believe that as entrepreneurs, we've seen so many businesses closing prematurely simply because they're not getting or receiving relevant help. So I hope you are also receiving an eye-opener as we're discussing about the entrepreneurs and what opportunities are there for you to go. So now let's go into, we spoke about DTI, that they have also such information?
Well, the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, they are the custodian of BEE.
Wow.
So custodian in a sense that they have the mandate, the BE mandate from government. So,
Wow.
so if you go visit their site, I mean, all the legislations are there, and you may also have access to other links. And then the BE Commission, recently established also, is assisting in the monitoring of the pace of BEE. So you can get a lot of information from there.
Okay.
But most importantly, so those two sides will give you information in terms of the knowledge around this legislation.
Okay.
But once you have that, then you need to have a targeted approach to say, what is it that you want? I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to grow your business, you need an extra loan, or you just want training or mentoring or whatever that has to do with growing your business. Then you'll say the next step would be, who are the corporates that are most likely to hear my case? And that's where you do the Google stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you will find company A, their focus is on helping stockbrokers only.
Okay.
Or black asset managers only. Company B, their focus is panel beaters because it is the nature of their business. You know, but they don't deal with asset managers. So if you are an asset manager, you approach them, they're going to throw your proposal into a bin. You know, so that is why it is important to understand those dynamics.
Okay.
You know, okay, company A does this, does that, and then you read about what they do for BEE and how they do it. So by the time you put together your proposal, you've got that information at the back of your mind. You know, and you write it in such a way that it meets the criteria and it addresses the challenges that they would have highlighted on their website.
Yeah. Wow. Let's take this opportunity. Guys, we only spoke about 1% or one company as an example of what they have in their stalls for empowering of black people. And it's proud to say, when we're talking about this, to say a black business now can get so many opportunities out there. And it's not a fellas, it's not just stories, it's actual business that are getting assisted and they're able to grow themselves. So if you're running a business there, think about how to grow that business. Don't close it. And since we have a lot of unemployment in the country, this is an opportunity for our business to up their game so that we can have more people that are going to employ and more business are going to grow in our black society, and we have more a positive outlook other than the social ills that we have when we don't have business. So now you spoke about research, Googling. I think that's the right way that you said, let's Google. Maybe I want to say, let's say you are a business now and you want to grow yourself and say, I want to take my business to be formal. What is the importance of compliance as a business, as an entrepreneur?
Well, I must be honest, I'm not an expert in that.
Okay.
But I mean, surely the CIPC website,
yes,
could be useful in that regard.
Wow.
Because you would know what the requirements are. But it's not my area of expertise in terms of compliance, and compliance is broad. Compliance in the financial sector would be different to compliance in the manufacturing. Different to compliance in agriculture. So again, it will depend on which sector are you operating from. Do your Google stuff. Then you will know that if you operate in this sector, these are the legal compliance that you need to meet before you do business in that area.
Wow.
For example, in the financial sector, you need to have a license, to be registered as a financial services provider. You can't give advice if you don't have that kind of registration.
Wow, awesome.
But in a different sector, they've got their own requirement. Wow. So I think again, it requires one to familiarize yourself with the requirements of that particular sector. Wow. But there isn't compliance that is generic across. It is perfect.
Yeah. So there's no blanket approach to it.
No, absolutely
There's specifics.
not. Yeah. But what I wanted to add, we spoke about socioeconomic development.
Yeah.
And socioeconomic development, it's pretty much the same with enterprise and supplier development.
Okay.
The difference is that enterprise and supplier development, it's solely for entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Now, socioeconomic development has got to do with NGOs,
Okay.
NPOs or PBOs.
Yeah.
And these are communities, are structures rather, that have been established to uplift society.
Yeah.
And they do it in many different ways. You could have an old age home, you could have an ECD center, you could have a program for people with disabilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they also have that opportunity.
Wow.
Because companies must spend at least 1% of net profit after tax. This is money.
Wow.
In providing, financial assistance. And the same principle as I explained when I was talking about enterprise and supply development applies.
Okay.
That you can get funding for your NGO services, for NPO services, but it needs to be a targeted approach.
Okay.
So when you're writing your proposal requesting funding, don't just send it gunshot approach to everyone. Know the companies that have a similar focus area as your organization.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Same thing. Take a BMW to a Toyota. Never.
Doesn't
no luck.
work. Yes.
It's not going to get fixed. So you will find that certain companies will say, our socioeconomic development program focuses on children, focuses on women, focuses on business. Now you come with a proposal that focuses on soccer. And then they'll say, no, we don't do soccer, but we look at children in terms of education.
Wow.
We look at women in terms of economic empowerment. We look at, whatever.
Wow.
So if you send your proposal to the wrong company, it will get
Rejected.
straight into the bin. Not even decline, straight into the bin. Because these companies, they get lots of proposals.
Yes.
They can't be spending time reading on something that is irrelevant.
Yes.
They just discard. And then they'll focus on what is relevant to them. So before, as an NGO, before you apply, please Google.
So if you're an NPO or an NGO or CPO that is there in the community and you want to fundraise or you have a proposal in your organization, please do a research. Companies are there, the money is ready to be used for that cause. Maybe as we conclude, what could be your advice, especially in the BEE? I know we've emphasized that we need a lot of awareness because, we throw these words around. How we BE when, and we lose the meaning because now when you have broken down what BE is all about, I'm like, we could have taken an opportunity of this time because now it's a legislature that we must really use for our advantage.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a reciprocal approach here.
Yeah.
Government have a responsibility to inform society. I doubt if it's done to a greater extent for people to take opportune of this available legislation.
True.
I don't think so. So I think from the one side, government has got that responsibility that, run campaigns on TV, run ads on radio. There's community papers these days. There's social media platforms. Just break it down.
Yeah.
To say BEE is not good enough because, like you were saying, I mean, it was an eye opener. And it's not about education. It's just those kind of things that it doesn't cross your mind. But if you see constantly, you'll start paying attention.
Yes.
And I believe it is easier to communicate these days because of we live in this digital world.
True.
You know, we have access to smartphones.
True.
You know, Google is not difficult. WhatsApp is there. Facebook is there. YouTube is there.
Yes.
You know, so I think if there's something that government can do, is break this down to employees in the most simple terms.
In simplest way.
I said employees, to people in the most simple terms. Because if you read the act, oh my goodness, it's written in that language.
Yes. You feel like it's not talking to you.
Yeah, it's written in that language. Yeah. So to send people to the DTI and the BE Commission, it's the formal repository of information that has to do with BE. But if you go there for the first time, you gotta go like, what the hell am I doing? You know what I mean?
This is too much.
It is too much.
Yeah.
It is too much information. I mean, the Gazette on the generic code, it's probably 125 pages. Who wants to read 125 pages? So I think the government can use this opportunity to simplify BEE in the most easiest way so that entrepreneurs, society can just take opportunity of it.
Wow.
And for the entrepreneurs themselves,
yes,
it comes back to Google.
Yes.
There are huge opportunities in terms of, funds available and other non-financial support for entrepreneurs available.
Wow.
You just need to know where to go. But that is then informed by the Google that you're going to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hope and believe that you have received so much information and knowledge today to be inspired again. If Boso Kabangu le company, tintita your file now and start Googling again. Start afresh, This is an opportunity for black business to thrive, for black business to be known, and for excellence to be there. We spoke earlier about one business that they took just from being doing spraying in the community, and it had escalated to be a professional
the panel shop.
The panel beater shop, that it just moved because of the exposure. Knowledge is power, and information is there. Let's go and do our research, and if you can do anything, do not give up on your business.
I think what you just mentioned now, and I can give one example of maybe that example will translate better to the viewers. There's a program I was personally involved in as an employee of Alexander Forbes. And we used to call it the Adopt a Panel Shop.
Wow.
So that program entailed identifying panel shops in the townships. And then we will then say, okay, the objective is to move you from this level to a much professional level so you can access insurance related opportunities. Because with insurance, you don't just take your car to any panel shop.
Yes.
They've got accreditation that goes with that. So most of the panel shops in the townships are not accredited. It's Baba and Umtwana. They have a couple of tools and then they've got the skills, but apart from that, nothing else. So we took, I think, about 8 panel shops that we transformed from being at that level to a more professionalized level. And then they received industry accreditation, which then allowed them to access insurance jobs.
Wow.
So what we did, we will go into a workshop. We will buy them from a spray booth, a spray guns and whatever equipment that they needed. And then we will then train the staff, in terms of how to use those things and stuff like that.
Wow.
And the total expense would be absorbed by Alexander Forbes because it is their program.
Wow.
So the individuals would have benefited that out of nowhere, their workshop has been transformed from being this to being that at no cost to them. And on average, what we invested per panel shop could have been in the range of 2 million.
Yo.
So this is 2 million that you didn't have in the bank.
Yes.
And you would probably never have had.
Yes. Yes.
So that's what enterprise and supplier development means.
Oh, wow.
In a very refined manner.
Wow. Nizwele bafowethu emakhaya nodadewethu. I hope that today's show is really breaking all these barriers that we thought existed also in our minds, because sometimes we reject ourselves before we even get further in our step as entrepreneurs. Do you have any last words that you can share with our viewers?
No, well, I was privileged to be part of this discussion. I'm very passionate about development. I'm very passionate about transformation.
Yeah.
And, just in simple terms, just have access to knowledge.
Wow.
Google.
Our guest is very sound. From today, I was learning a lot, and I hope that you are also learning. And thank you for the passion, especially for the BE. For us, really, from now on, we won't be throwing that word like, it's meaningless, because of we know what it means and what it applies. So let's go there and develop our businesses and take advantage of BE policies that are there in our areas. And the important one, Google, and we'll be informed. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Also, God bless you.
Thank you, Scelo.
Hola.